Howdy ho guys, Bo here again and welcome to the vlog. I can't speak. In this entry I wanted to talk about unconsciousness again, right? Because this is part of my repertoire of ideas that I spread in these entries that will help you attain new I don't want to say plateaus, but new levels of consciousness, right? And unconsciousness, as I've explained in my previous entries, describing and explaining the role and importance of unconsciousness. I invite you to check those out if you haven't already, so that you have a bit of background for this entry. But unconsciousness is one of these paradigm shifts that we are currently kind of fiddling with, that will allow us to move towards, the next step of conscious evolution for human society, right? Because this is already happening on an individual level, right? Awakenings are happening across the globe, right? But as we start to adopt these in daily life, we will start to have an impact on the world and to facilitate the conscious shift that is happening. It's so exciting, right? But in this entry I wanted to kind of give another kind of example, another kind of practical insight on how unconsciousness might be helpful for you, right? And the kind of another way of illustrating why unconsciousness is so important, right? And so just as a quick summary, unconsciousness is the evolution from all consciousness, which includes all consciousness, right? Unconsciousness is essentially a liberation of moral and intellectual rigor, essentially, because it's it has been so popular to date, where people take rigid stances, intellectually, morally, philosophically, and this whole unconsciousness paradigm is basically an acceptance of everything, right? It is not the perpetuation of paradox, but rather it is the disillusion of paradox, right? It is being fine with something being black and white, because we don't live in a static universe, right? The sun or the planet Earth is never going to be here forever, right? The sky is not always going to be bright, or dark, right? And so unconsciousness is a closer kind of representation of the actual fluid nature of existence, right? It is less kind of mentally rigid and more kind of aligned with how existence actually is, on an energetic level, where it's flowing and changing all the time, right? Because mental fixation is a poison, it is a disease, right? That's not to say that mental activity is a disease itself, because it's easy to and in the past I'm guilty of saying things that might imply that, but no, I'm not saying that thought is bad, right? Because there is even with someone like Eckhart Tolle, who wrote about the power of now and things like that, presence, you are not your mind, which might seem as though it's implying that thought is wrong or bad and that we're moving away from it, but no, it's not actually. Thought is perfectly fine. What is changing about our kind of treatment of thought is that it is becoming less rigid and neurotic and abstract, and more aligned with the actual way that the universe is, which is perpetual change and motion, right? Because the Buddha said, all beliefs will at some point be proven wrong. All mental positions will at some point become invalid, right? The cost benefit will flip, right? The cost benefit calculation will flip at some point. So like I wanted to kind of give like an illustration to this, right? Which is, so like, say you're going about your day, right? And like you're having thoughts, as I'm kind of assuming you will have if you're someone like me, who's just like thinking all the time, stuck in his head, right? And like you stumble across something like a person, maybe you're going to work or something, and you're like interacting with a colleague, and in that moment you love that person, right? You think, or like that thing, you're like, oh wow, I'm really appreciative of this thing in my life right now, or this person, indeed, right? That's I love them, or it, right? I'm so appreciative of it, right? But then like a day or a couple of days later, like you have a fallout with that person, or like that thing that you thought was so amazing suddenly disappoints you and like breaks on you or something, and you're like, oh, for fuck's sake, fuck this thing, or fuck this person. I don't know like why I was so like positive about this thing, right? And of course, like the thing about unconsciousness is like you're starting to see the bigger picture, which is like an oscillation between these two seeming contradictions, right? AKA this thing or person is good, or this thing in person is bad, right? And like the more that you kind of traverse this oscillation, like you start to have more and more times when you question like, do I actually like this thing or do I hate it, right? So like if you have this kind of a thought, and I have this all the time, do I like this thing or do I hate it? Is this thing good or is it bad, right? That's your opportunity to say, no, I love this thing and I hate it, right? That's the switch, right? And that's like a kind of tool that like that we can use to kind of go into unconsciousness. Because like I said, the reason why I say that unconsciousness is important is because it's flexible. It's a fluid paradigm. It's not like all consciousness, which is very black and white, which is very mutually exclusive, right? And that's quite inflexible, right? It's conducive to like dogma, and like I don't want to say stupidity, like I was about to say stupidity, but like there's more like mental rigidity, just mental intellectual brittleness, like where like you're just like you're too slow on the uptake, basically, because, and like some people are okay with that, like there's plenty of people who like are fine with that, right, in society. But like if you're someone who's a bit more energetically like inclined or energetically sensitive, like it's not going to help you to be like these people who are like really mentally rigid and morally rigid, because like you're energetically sensitive, right? You're empathic or whatever it is, right? You see all different angles of things. You see so many different perspectives, right? So it doesn't serve you to like have to identify yourself with any one position, right? And if anything, it will free you once you start to embrace the seeming paradoxical nature, or like these paradoxes that kind of lie at the very lots of like between these contradictory things that we observe in a dualistic existence, right? That is your ticket. Whenever you ask yourself, do I like this person or do I hate them? I can't seem to decide. You say to yourself, no, I love them and I hate them. I love them and I hate them. How does that fucking make sense? It doesn't make sense. And in that is the most fucking beautiful sense of it all. It may not necessarily make mental, logical sense, right? But like, do you see the significance of this now? Like, it is an exercise in detachment. This is another thing that like leads into unconsciousness kind of a thinking. It is learning how to detach and to let go. This is essentially like a big thing in like the spiritual movement, that is, unraveling right now. and just in general, like, self-help and personal development, it is learning to let go. Because, like, we've traditionally been a very doing kind of a society, a very doing kind of a culture, where it's like, you have to do this, and like these are the steps to do it effectively, right? It's been about like excellence, right? That's what our society has been for the past like few centuries, right? It has been about excellence. But now, what we are moving towards is learning how to be free, or how to be completely detached from everything, right? And both of these perspectives are very, very important, because like, and it's not learning to be detached, right? The new paradigm includes the old, right? And consciousness and all consciousness have their uses. But it becomes this thing where you have control over which paradigm you consciously employ in any given moment, right? You can be mentally rigid in one moment, but then be completely like detached from any concept, any identity in the next, right? And that is very fucking powerful, right? You get to consciously choose whether or not you want to like take sides and do the typical like, football thing, the sports thing where it's like, we must beat them, the other team, right? Or you can choose to be like, fuck it, it doesn't matter. Yes, I want this team to win. I want this concept to be right. I want my identity to be the strongest. But when it comes down to it, like, it's not a big deal. And that is the beauty of this shift that we're going into. Like, we know how to fix onto things mentally. We human beings are so good at doing this, particularly in this society, like in this kind of civilization that we live in right now. Like, we're so good at fixing things in our minds and having knowledge, being knowledgeable, right? But now we're learning how to detach from that knowledge, those identities, so that we aren't weakened by like being overly attached to them, right? Because they will change, our knowledge will change in terms of like what it means to us. And if we're not flexible enough, then we will go down with the ship, essentially, right? It's learning how to commit, but then also learning how to let go. And that is how we live. That is how we own and move forwards. That is how we move in life and live presently, but also consciously, right? So cool. I hope that was insightful. I hope it was helpful, and I hope it will help you in, moving your consciousness along, so that you can spread it to the rest of society and be part of this amazing shift that's happening right now. So cool. Hope you guys are having a great day, and I will catch you guys in the next entry. Peace out. Yeah!